back, everybody. I'm coming to you from Prague. Today it
Uh-huh.
is 12:30 at night. So I'm up in the middle of the night just for you. If we keep this up, I'm going to see Santa Claus on one of these nights. Um, so tell me a story about something that has happened for you in the last week, how something you tried with building thinking classrooms and how it's gone. All right. So let me know. You can put up your hand. You can type in the chat. It could be something that came from last week. It could be something that came from the week before. Or it could even be something that came from you having independently read the book or interacted with me in through some other medium. But tell me a story of something you've tried and how it's gone. Let's start with uplifting stories, something that was positive in your classroom in the last week.
I did an activity today, um, and it was an idea I got off one of the Facebook groups called Bumpy Pumpkins. And I teach
Okay.
senior kindergarten, so I gave my students a number. We've been working on teen numbers, so I gave them a number in the teens, and and four pumpkins, and they had to put bumps on them. And I figure out how many bumps they had to put on each one to equal that number, and then use that to write an addition sentence. And I was really impressed with their sentences, like or 6 plus 8 plus 1 is 16. And they were writing things like that. And we haven't really worked a lot on that, like addition that way. We've been doing tens and ones, but it was really impressive to watch them all kind of get it. And as I went around, kind of the little hints I had to give them when they were making a mistake or something like that.
Right. And did you push them a little bit if they had one kid? Did you ask them to come up with another one?
Yeah, I would give them another teen number to pick.
Okay.
And they would, and so it was really good because I didn't have to wait for everybody to catch up and be on the same page. As I went around the room and I saw a group got it, I could give them the next number to keep them going.
Nice. So you were managing flow. Yeah. The Bumpy Pumpkins is just a specialized version of, or let's call it a contextualized version of, if my answer is 16, what was the question? Right. But it restricts it to addition, whereas if 16 is the answer, what was the question could expand to lots of different operations. Yeah. Nice. Thanks for sharing. Um, who else has a story for us?
I do. Um, so this week my one algebra class was ahead of the other one. So I was like, okay, we're gonna try the expressions activity. And they thought it was a game and they were like racing each other to see who could get it done first. And they were actively engaged the whole class period. And even the kids that don't normally participate were working.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? Like this task is, I call it a unicorn task. It just is like you take it out of the package and it just works. All right. Yeah. All right. Anything else? Anybody else have a story for me?
I would love to share.
Yes, Shanice.
Um, I'm in admin, so I go into different classes, and you get the kids who are labeled as the ones who disrupt class. And I said, let's try something new, and we tried the number combinations, like make these numbers. I did it in 2 different classes, and I had never seen. And these kids were the ones who got it.
Oh
And
yeah.
kid's a language learner, so they always keep saying, oh, he doesn't understand. He was working with another kid. He had enough language to go to and fro. And the involvement, I couldn't stop them. And the minute they finished, they're like, can we get another one? Do you have to stop? It was just amazing. And I wish you could record that and share it with more classrooms to show that they could get in at different levels, and they kept it going, the conversations, and wanted more.
Absolutely. And this is, I think you said three things there that were really, really important. One was, they had enough language to make it work. When there's a will, there's a way, right? If we make, when we have multilingual learners, if we specify that the only form of communication that they're allowed to use is English, verbal English, then we're robbing them of opportunities to find ways to communicate. They can point and gesture and write, and there's so many ways that they can communicate with each other. The second thing you said was these kids, it was the kids who are often labeled who get it. Because we tend to think of the diversity in our classroom through the lens of how students perform, either in class or on tests. And when it comes to performance, there's a huge diversity in your class. But once you start talking about things like thinking and collaborating and communicating, your kids are much closer to each other than you think. And then when that becomes the focus or that becomes the medium, then different kids can rise to the surface. And the third thing you said was like, they were just so engaged. Yeah, the brain wants to think. Everybody's brain wants to think. When they're engaged, time goes quickly, they're having fun, right? And we heard the same thing from Leah, right? Awesome, thanks for that. Who else has a story for us?
I have one.
Yeah,
I
please.
actually did Answers Are with administrators and had all the whiteboards up and gave them all the information. And I had them in groups of 3, and it worked very well. But one group, I had one administrator actually sit down and said, "I'm done." And the other 2 who were in the groups went over and they were looking at me like I was supposed to save them. And so I went over and I said, "Hey, you all right?" She said, "I just need a break." I said, "Okay. When you're ready for finish your break," I said, "come on back over." And then the other 2 principals, these are grown people, and the other 2 principals said to me, "What's wrong?" I said, "She just needed a break." I said, "But, what would you do if this were your classroom?" And they said, "Well, maybe we'd go over and help her." And the one said, "Well, I was getting ready to give her the pen." And I was like, "Oh, so this is really what's happening here." And come to find out, she really didn't have a voice. And I even had the collaboration continuum up there.
Yeah.
And she said we didn't really collaborate. And so that kind of came out, but it was very telling. But we were trying to make the point we want kids to think, not just
Mhm.
mimic. And so we had 2 other activities where we had 2 other teachers to show them what mimicking was versus what thinking felt like. And it was extremely powerful. So I was glad I learned how to do that
Yeah.
and got the opportunity to do it with them.
And this idea that we as adults are better learners is just not true, right? We have to, it's like I often challenge teachers because teachers will say this to me that, "Oh, yeah, but this works so well in this workshop because we're adults and we're math teachers or whatever." And I said, tell me about how you behaved at your last staff meeting.
Mhm.
And were you the pillar of a good learner your last staff meeting? And they're like, "No." I said, "So maybe it's not you, maybe it's the environment that we're creating here that actually drives you to be the best learner that you can be," right? And we have to think like that. We have to assume like, yes, we bring certain things to the fray, but we are just as likely to behave as our kids as kids are. Yesterday, today, whatever day I'm on, I co-taught a 7th grade classroom, and the kids were unbelievable, right? By far, one of the easiest audiences I've ever worked with, 7th graders, right? Like every group is an amazing group of learners if the task is right. But sometimes you still have to deal with personality. Yeah. All right. As per usual, the stories that we're sharing are because my stories and my data might motivate you to try something, but it's your stories and your data that's going to keep you doing it, right? And those stories of your peers and so on. So let's keep moving forward. Today, we are going to engage in a complete lesson. Okay. So day 1, we talked a lot about how do we build a thinking classroom? Like, how do we get that going? And those 4 practices at the beginning, right? Thinking tasks, random groups, vertical whiteboard, and that arrow. And how we can use that to build a culture of thinking, and how we have to you do them all together and then start with non-curriculars. Last time we talked about the second toolkit, in particularly flow, but if you were reading along, it's about the autonomy, how we launch a lesson, how we avoid answering their questions, how we arrange the furniture in our classroom, these sorts of things. Today, we're going to actually put it all together. So what does it look like when we're far enough down the path of building a thinking classroom that we're ready to actually take on a curricular lesson? And not just any curricular lesson, but a curricular lesson that is designed on the principles of flow that we talked about last time. This idea that we're going to back up the train as far as necessary into the station to let everybody get on the train. How we then move that train down the station by giving a sequence of increasingly challenging tasks that get harder and harder and harder, so that by the end of the lesson, the train is way down the track and we're doing something that's really, really, really advanced. But the whole time we were only making one small incremental change to keep that balance between challenge and ability. Okay. Now, the benefit of this is that you get to see what a lesson looks like. What does it look like on a random Thursday in January when we have to teach whatever's on page 152 of the textbook, right? Like, what does Building Thinking Classroom look like when we're tackling content, right? So yesterday we were looking at linear relations. That is part of the content, and it was a section out of the textbook. My colleague who was co-teaching in a different classroom, they were actually doing the lesson we're going to do today. Now, like I said, the advantage of doing this is you get to see what it looks like on a random Thursday in January. The downside of it is it's content, right? It's not as much fun as answers are or the river crossing problem. And the other problem is that you know this content, or you think you know this content, right? Which means that you're much more likely to bring your teacher brain to the task rather than your student brain, right? It's really easy to engage you in something like answers are because you don't know the content. So you're having to figure it out as you go. But this is content that is rooted in something that you know. Some of you taught it last week. That's fine. It doesn't matter. I need you to engage in it as learners. So stay out of the teacher talk. Stay out of saying things like, well, when I teach it, this is how we do it. Or stay out of saying things like, well, the answer is this because I know the answer is this, right? You're not allowed to know that stuff. So that doesn't mean you suddenly forgot how to do addition, right, or subtraction. You know some of the basis of this content, and I'll cue you in the launch to what is it that you do know by saying things like, so you know this, we covered this last week or 2 weeks ago or last year or whatever. I'll say something to that effect. And then you get to use that as a cue to what it is you know. Within the lesson, even though you're not allowed to know things like a teacher, you're allowed to learn, which means that you're allowed to figure things out as we move forward to take on that next step. All right. Are we clear about that? We're going to do a couple of things a little bit differently about how we're going to set up our board. So all right. So last time we had the arrow that was rushing versus going slow. Today, we're going to go back to the arrow of collaborating versus turn taking. But I want to put into collaboration that we're slowing down. It's super tempting to assume that just because you know it, everybody else in the group knows it. And that just isn't true, right? Just because it's on the tip of your finger or tip of your tongue that everybody else is in the same state. So don't assume that just because you know something that everyone else does. Slow down, go slow. It's really, really important. The second thing is we're going to set up our boards like this. So you're going to set your board up like this. actually, maybe that takes up a lot of room. We won't do it that way. These boards are not as big as you'd think. Okay, so we'll just go like this. And I'll tell you how I would do things differently in the classroom and how I did things differently yesterday. All right, the board's not very big, so we're going to go like this, which means that you're going to have to do the names up here. And then this or that. All right. You're going to set the board up like this. You're going to be going through a series of questions. Okay. You're going to do question 1 here. You're not going to number it, but I'm just telling you where you're going to do question 1. You're going to do it right there. You're going to do question 2 here. Okay. Then you're going to do question 3 here. I know this is unusual for you. You want to think about it like that, but you're going to do it here. Okay. You'll be okay. You have, Thursday, Friday to recover before the weekend. You're going to do question 4 here. All right. When you get to question 5, you're going to erase what's on number 1 and do question 5 there. Okay. Then when you get to 6, you're going to erase 2 and do 6 there. You're just going to be working constantly in this circular pattern. All right. Constantly just moving around that circle. And that's why we are doing it in the way we're doing it. Okay? So you're just going to keep moving around, which means you're going to have to control your font. All right? And then we'll talk a little bit at the end about what this looks like actually in a classroom and how that plays out. All right? Can we do all that? Can we do that? These are sort of new routines. Everything else is the same. We're going to use the knowledge feed to go get a new task and so on. All right. And we're going to use the knowledge feed to tell us what group we're in. All right. And okay. So are we ready for the task? Okay. Like I said, some of you know this topic. It's okay, just stay out of that teacher talk as much as possible. All right, are we ready? I'll give you the knowledge feed links in a minute, and then you'll have access to all of the rooms and everything, okay? So, just want to make sure. Okay. All right. Okay, and what you're going to experience now is a full lesson, start to finish. We're doing the launch, the body, the closing. We're going to do notes and homework. We're doing it all. And then we're going to unpack all of that. What does a full lesson look like? And action. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a good weekend. Today, we're going to start a new topic, but it's not an entirely new topic. You have seen some of these ideas. You've seen at least one of these ideas before, and the idea you've seen before is this. If I have a rectangle and I tell you that one side is 3 and the other side is 4, what is the area of this rectangle? So go ahead, type in the chat if you wish. What is the area of this rectangle? Yes, it is 12. Okay, so my question is, what arithmetic, and yes, it's square units, we're not going to worry about the square units. What arithmetic problem did we just solve? Yes, it was 3 times 4. We figured out 3 times 4 equals 12. All right. What if I give you a rectangle and I tell you that the area is 15 and this side is 3, what will this side be? Yes, that is 5. And what arithmetic question did we just solve? Yes, 15 divided by 3 equals 5. Good. All right. So here comes your next question. What if I have two rectangles? And this side's 4, and this side's 10, and this side's 2. What would the area of the first rectangle be? 40. And the second one? 8. And what arithmetic question did we just solve now, right? What did we just solve? We solved 4 times what? Yes, 4 times 12 equals 48, right? So we did multiplication, area multiplication, but this time on a combined set of rectangles. Likewise, what if I tell you, what if I give you two rectangles and I tell you that this side is 3 and this area is 30 and this side is 9, what will this side be and that side be? So 10, 10 and 3. And what arithmetic question did we just answer? Yeah, it's division, but which, it's not 30 divided by 3. It's 39 divided by 3. We just answered 39 divided by 3 equals 13. Yeah, right? Because it's 39 divided by 3 is 13. So this is like area model, but for division. And that's what we're going to do today. So for example, if I give you a question like this, okay, so it's going to go like this. If I give you a question like,
Peter, I think you're breaking up.
okay,
Peter, I
Doing
believe
now.
you're breaking up. Can you hear me?
yes,
I believe you're breaking up. I don't know if you can hear me now.
okay. Let's just, how's that?
I
Is that
think it's
better?
better. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Thank
Good.
you.
So this is what we're going to be doing is I'm going to give you questions like 88 divided by 8. And what you're going to do is you're going to think about what question I'm asking you. What I'm asking you is this. We're dividing by 8. I'm telling you the area is 88, which means we're going to set it up like this, 80 and 8. And then you're going to find these two missing sides. You're going to find this and this, right? And this would be 10, and this would be 1. So then the question you just answered is 88 divided by 8 equals 11. Okay, so that's what we're doing. I'm going to be giving you questions like this. You have to set it up like that, and then find the missing sides to get the answer. Okay, you don't start with the sides because you're doing it in your mental math. No, you're starting with the area divided by the side and then adding the side lengths that are missing. Does that make sense? Okay. The first question you're going to do in your groups is, so is 48 divided by 4. Nope, you did that one already. Yeah, you're gonna do it again. 48 divided by 4 is the first one you're going to be doing. All right. So it's just to get the routine and setting it up right. Let me give you the knowledge feeds. Links. So here they come. And you'll notice once you click on one of those that they are all what we just wrote on the chalkboard is in there along with the first question. So that's what we're going to jump into. Remember, you got to find your jot board. You got to decide what frame you're working on. You're going to get on that frame. You're going to mark your territory. You're going to do the first question. And when you've done the first question, go back to the knowledge feed. There will be another one. Okay, so let me just put you into groups. So we're going to have 70 groups. And again, make sure you accept the invitation. And if you're having technical problems, let us know. But if there's probably people here who were not part of the first day or the second day, which means that Jotboard is brand new for them. If they're in your group, make sure you're helping them out, getting onto that Jotboard. Make sure that you're helping them. If somebody can't actually get on Jotboard, share your screen. Your this or that question is, do you prefer tea or coffee? All right. So accept the invitation, off you go. Welcome back, everybody. I have given you here 3 questions that are very similar to the ones we just did, but I may have put them in the wrong order. So I want you to think about what order they should be in and why. Don't type anything yet, just think about it. Though not just what order, but why. Super important is the why. If this was a class, I would have you huddled with me at a whiteboard and I would have you doing a turn and talk right now about what order they should be in and why. Okay, so which question do you think you should be first and why? Go ahead, type in the chat. Yes, it's easy to break apart. Why is it easy to break apart? Okay, yes. Ava, tell me about this, what you just wrote.
So if we're going to decompose 48, we can do it by place value. So that we'll have 40 and 8, and both of those are divisible by 2.
Nice. So we can break it by place value, right? So that one is, and place value is probably the easiest way we can break a number up, by place value. Right, and that is the easiest thing we could possibly do. All right, and of course, I think we can all figure out what these are, so I don't think we need to do that. So which one should be second and why? So this one was first, which one should be second and why? Okay, 56 divided by 4, I agree, but why? We're still dividing by 1 digit. Thank you.
Peter, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Is this
Is it
something
a
you would
student
do?
question or a teacher question?
So that's my question. This is what you do with students? Yes.
This is what I'm doing with students.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So, okay, Tom, turn on your microphone and tell me what you just wrote there.
So when in the previous one, we can look at the tens and go, it's going to be 40. Whereas this time, because we've got 56, if we try putting 50 in the first box, we're going to run into trouble. So we need to think about a different strategy there.
Right, because 4 doesn't divide nicely into 50 or 6. So we can't just do place value this time, right? So what is...
Peter, I believe you are frozen again. Sorry for that. Let me see if I can get him.
There I am. I should be back.
You're back. Welcome back.
Yeah. Pamela, tell me what you mean by that.
So we were talking in our group, and I believe it was Madison, my team member, that came up with that 40 is the closest 10 to 50 that 4 will go into.
Yeah. And then what will that leave in the last box?
Which also makes it easier to subtract what's left, which is 16.
Okay. So we can do that sort of subtraction, right? So if we can't do place value is super friendly. If we can't do place value, what we do is we do multiples of 10. But it doesn't have to be 10. It can also be 20, 30, and so on, right? So we try to do those multiples because they're friendly. All right. And that makes the last one third here, 28 divided by 12. How's that one different? It's 3 digits, right? And it's divided by a 2-digit number. And we just have to stay calm. And we're still dividing by 12. What is a friendly number for 12? 120. So we do 120. What's left? So let's think about this. 288 minus 120. So we got 268 or 168 left. What can we do? Oh, we can do another 120. So we subtract another 120, and now we got 48. 48 is pretty friendly for 12, right? And this time we're going to get 10 and 10 and 4. Is that the only way we could have done it? Right? And that's true of all of these. We could have done them differently. We could have also gone with 2 boxes, and we could have just gone 240 and 48. We could have gone 144 and 144. Whatever works for you is what defines friendly is whatever you're comfortable with. And you can just subtract away until you get down to, and you can have as many boxes as you need. Okay. But in general, we want to start by looking at place value. Place value is the friendliest way to do it. If that doesn't work, think about your multiples of 10. If that doesn't work, think about other things. But multiples of 10 will always work to some extent. Right? All right. You did great, but I'm a little worried you're going to forget some of this stuff by Monday. I'm really worried you're going to forget it 2 weeks from now when we have the big unit test on division. So what's going to happen next is you're going to make some notes to your future forgetful self. And for that purpose, I've set up a template for you here. The template has 3 examples. Example 1, which I've already started for you. You just have to fill in the blanks. Example 2, I've given you the question, but you're going to have to draw the picture. Example 3 is create your own adventure. You get to come up with your own division question, but it has to be an area model question. And then things to remember. What are some things you know now that you want to make sure you remember 3 weeks from now? This note needs a title. We need to put a title in here. Can somebody tell me what we've been learning today? It is division, but it's not just division, because we were doing division yesterday too. It's division using area model. Okay, it's division using area model. That's what we're doing here. So we're going to need that title. So you got to put a title on the note. The notes, they start at frame 21. So we're going to put you back in the same groups. You're going to go to the same jot board, and then you just got to scroll all the way up to 21 and up, and those templates are already there. And you just grab one, mark your territory with a sticky note, and start talking and filling it out. Keep in mind this collaboration rubric. I want to see you really collaborating. as you're doing these notes together. It's not a race to finish it. Take your time. And I'm putting you back in all the same breakout rooms. Off you go. All right, there everyone comes. All right. So, welcome back, everybody. You did great working in groups. It's now time to see if you can do it on your own. And for that purpose, I've given you some check your understanding questions. These are all in the knowledge feeds. I've given you some mild ones, some medium ones, and some spicy ones. There are 3 rules to this. Rule number 1, do your own. This is your time to work on your own. Rule number 2, choose where you want to start, choose where you want to go. You want to start at mild? That's fine. You want to start at spicy? Fill your boots. You want to start on the second medium one? It's your choice. Rule number 3, once you've done a bunch, check your answers. Use a calculator to check your answers. Make sure you're getting the right answer. Don't use a calculator to do the computation. Just use a calculator to check your answers. So rule 1, do your own. Rule 2, choose where you want to start, choose where you want to go. And rule 3, after you've done a bunch, check your answers. You're going to have some time to work on this on your own. So you're going to have the next 7 minutes to just sit and work on it on your own. And then we're going to debrief the lesson. Keep your eye on the knowledge feed. As you're working, I might be adding more questions. All right. So take a few minutes on your own, take out a piece of paper and do some of these. All right. And scene. And the lesson is over. All right. So let's unpack this first. First, we're going to just talk about the idea of area division. So just FYI, I have done this lesson multiple times with 5th graders. They get the exact same lesson you did. The only difference is, depending on how much time we have, we either do or don't do notes. So if we have a 45-minute lesson, we're not doing notes. We're doing just the consolidation and then the check your understanding questions at the end. If we have an hour, we're doing notes and the kids are fine with that. It just depends on how much time we have. So let's talk a little bit, because I was seeing comments pop up as you were working about what you, so as I was saying, I've done this lesson multiple times with 5th graders. One of my colleagues did it today in Prague here with 5th graders. It's when we do it, if it's a 45-minute lesson, we're not doing the notes. If we have more than 45 minutes, we're doing the notes, but otherwise they're doing the same lesson that you got. So let's talk about what you liked about doing division this way. Okay. All right, Ophelia, tell me about what you just said.
Hi. So for us, we teach the area method. We teach, like the partial quotients, and then partial quotients, area model, and the algorithm. And I find that, generally algorithms are great for kids just because you're simply plugging it in and getting the right answer. But what's actually happening behind it? So the visual gives them an idea of what does that place value actually mean?
Right. So when we're doing this area model, we're the partial quotient model, we're maintaining the place value, right? Whereas the standard algorithm just looks at digits, it doesn't look at place value, right? The problem with the standard algorithm is it's kind of a black box, except that's the one that they have the most support for at home. Mm-hmm. But it is a black box. So Elliot, tell me about your comment.
So I was thinking that it gave a better entry point for students that aren't as familiar with their multiplication or division facts, because they can break it up whichever they want to. So if they really want to, if they're dividing by 15, for example, and they want to make all of their boxes 15, they can do that. And I also thought that it goes back into long division, because some of the kids do think as like, well, what's the closest, multiple of 15 in the hundreds place? or something like that. So it kind of ties into another method of division. So I think it's a good way to, I guess, sort of, what's the word? Support or like reinforce something that they have learned or maybe will learn in the future. And always
Right, this
having
idea
multiple
that we
methods.
want to,
Yeah.
that we want to, whatever number we pick has to be less than what the dividend is, right? Like,
Right.
so we have to make sure that we're breaking it, we're not overshooting, which is similar to the standard algorithm. Mr. Spence, tell me about the visual.
Hi, that's Ms. Spence, but that's okay.
Oh, Miss Spence.
I
I'm
don't
so
care.
sorry. Yes,
Don't
you're
be-
right. It said
don't
Miss
be-
Spence.
I'm done. It's like my students who are very visual can deal with the rectangles, and at least maybe during the course of a lesson, I got to fill at least one of them, and so they feel included. It's
Yeah.
not just the algorithm, which they don't remember, they have trouble with. I just think it's a nice visual way to do it for the very visual.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Susan, tell me about the relationship between multiplication and division.
In the 5th grade standards in Ohio, that's a huge focus, and they don't want us teaching the standard algorithm. So I've already taught partial quotients method, and I'm going to go back and utilize this because as I was doing it, I was thinking, why didn't I do this method at the same time I was doing partial quotients? Because it makes that relationship a lot more apparent.
Because it ties into that visual model and it taps into
Yes.
that area that they've already experienced, which is multiplication. Right. Shannon, tell me about Algebra 1.
In Algebra 1, we use the area model to multiply monomials by binomials and trinomials, and then binomials by binomials. And then in Algebra 2, we do division, where we have the answer down there, and we have one of the dividends, and we have to go the other way. So the more used to that they are, the better.
Right. Because this model is expandable upwards. All right. So, and it is in many teachers' curricula, and yet it is in many, not in many teachers' curricula. So but it is, it's
Peter,
so
apologies.
unstable again.
Yeah, you broke a little bit, so you can go back just 10 seconds ago. Sorry.
So if it's not in your curriculum, it's not hard to introduce it into your curriculum. It is an alternative method. I think it's far superior to the standard algorithm because it maintains that idea of the whole number. We're not just dealing with digits, we're dealing with the place value. We enter where students feel comfortable. They can start off by breaking by place value, then friendly numbers, then they can go anywhere they want, right? But there's so many interesting questions like that. And it just makes them feel empowered to do division. All right, so let's dig into the lesson. I know you have tons of questions, and of course we don't have time to answer them all, but let's dig into it. Let's start with the launch. Okay, so the launch was very quick, right? The launch is part of Toolkit 2, it's chapter 6, but it was very fast. We just very quickly launched, got going, very similar to last week when we were doing the answers are. Let's just get going. We started with multiplication, which is something that they're familiar with, and then we tied it to division. So that division connection to multiplication. What's important to ask yourself about the launch is what's not in the launch, right? What wasn't in the launch, right? I didn't do anything where place value didn't work. I didn't do any 3-digit numbers or 2-digit divisors, right? I didn't do anything like that. It was just really just enough description to get you going. And that's really what a launch should be. A launch should just be, what is it that you need to do? What do the students need to understand to answer the first question you're going to give them in the sequence, right? And then they learn from the first, and that's that flow state that we're in. As you're learning, as your ability grows, I'm increasing the challenge. And then if I need to support you, I will step in and support you. But it's what Julie Dixon calls just-in-time support, right? I only give you what you need to know just in time. Then I support you through the lesson. Julie also talks about just in case. So as teachers, we tend to want to do what's called just in case in the lunch. Just in case you see one where place value doesn't work, let me do one of those. Or actually would be, just in case you see one with 3 digits where place value works, let me do one of those. Just in case you see one with 2 digits where place value doesn't work, let me do one of those. Just in case you see 3-digit where place value doesn't work, let me do one of those. Just in case you see one with a 2-digit divisor, let me do one of those. Just in case, just in case, just in case. And that's what we tend to want to put in the lunch. We want to talk until we prepare the students to do a last question on the sequence. How are the kids doing if you're doing that? Because you're now 17 minutes into the lesson and the kids are still listening to you. How are the kids doing? How are the kids doing? They're not on task, right? They're overwhelmed. They're tuned out. Yeah, you're doing awesome. Let's just be clear about that. You're doing awesome, okay? But it's overwhelming for the kids. Instead, we give them just what they need in the start. And then we use hints throughout the lesson to support them if they get stuck. And we talked about that last time. All right, now we get into the body of the activity. And there's 2 things I want to talk about in the body. So the first one is this structure of working in a circle. And I know that this was really chunky when you were working on the chalkboard because it really limited your space. But picture students working on a whiteboard. And this is what I was doing today. This is what the teacher, what Nova was also doing in the 5th grade classroom, right? We divided the board in 4. They did the first one, then they did the second one, then they did the third, then they did the fourth, and they just kept working in this clockwise fashion. Okay. Why is that good for kids? Why is that good for teachers if they were doing that at the whiteboard? So think about that for a moment and type in the chat. Jamie, tell me about your comment there.
We've talked about, and I've used it in my classroom, where if you stop at a group for too long, you're kind of interrupting their flow, and then your thoughts are what become the forefront of it, and you're leading it. So if they're in a good flow, they can just keep working at their pace, and you're able to check the problems as you go around.
Yeah. And I think Mackenzie's point there about it allows you time to check. Can you tell me what you mean by the allowing time to check?
Sometimes in my own classroom, like my kids will answer a question and then they'll go on to the next question and they erase their work too quickly. So I'm not able to catch those mistakes in time.
Right. But now I don't feel as frantic because the questions live on the board for longer, right?
Right.
So I can go over and I don't have to rush to get there before they erase. I have more time. All right. And why is it good for them? Pamela, tell me about why it's good for them.
I put in a couple of things. You can see patterns for students working around. I forget what else I put in there. Oh, it allows it to grow. So the student is kind of seeing the patterns, but then they're seeing it kind of build and grow. So to the point that you made before, not trying to do all the things all at once, but just slowly build up.
And so seeing the patterns, they can't see the patterns if they keep erasing. They can use their previous work to remind them how to do something, right? So if they're on question 4, they can look back at the previous 3 and go, oh yeah, that's how we did this one. This might won't work the same. If they make a mistake, it's easier to intervene. Like let's say they made a mistake on question 4. I can step in and say, well, look, you did 2 and 3 correctly. Now rethink 4, right? So I can refer back to correct work that they do. It keeps it less messy. It's just
apologies for that. Let's see if we can get Peter back.
Oh.
There you are.
Yeah. So the question is, why clockwise? It's clockwise become, oh man, there's instability around here.
We can hear you, Peter, now.
Are we back?
Yep.
Yeah. Why clockwise? It's because human Western psychology all naturally starts in the top left-hand corner and either goes clockwise or diagonally. And you just have to pick up a print magazine and look at that, at any advertisement. You're going to see that all the pertinent information, advertising, people have known this for centuries. All the pertinent information starts in the top left-hand corner. It either goes diagonally to the bottom right or clockwise. And it's just how our psychology works. Didn't it just feel so natural to just work in that clockwise circle, right? It's just, and it's the same with the notes. It's why we move in that circle. All right. I know that that's not the direction that the coordinate plane is organized, but kids can understand both. All right. So this method was one. The other one had to do with when you were going and getting the next task from the knowledge feed. So I would use something similar in the classroom. Now keep in mind, the difference between being in a classroom is that I might have 8 groups in a classroom, or 10 or 13 at the most. I had 73 groups here today. All right. It's impossible for me to monitor everything that's going on. So when I use the knowledge feed, I call it a vertical banner. When I have that going, or a knowledge feed going in my classroom, I just save one little section of whiteboard and I just add the questions one at a time. Did you notice I was dribbling them in one at a time? This prevents them from being overwhelmed. Okay. But if I'm doing it in a classroom, I'm also erasing as I go. I try to allow no more than 3 questions to be on the board at a time, because it turns out that kids are overwhelmed in 2 different ways. They're overwhelmed by the work that they have yet to do. So that's why we dribble it in. But they're also overwhelmed by the work that they have already done. So what we see happen with the kids is, if there's too many questions up there, they're like, this is ridiculous. We've done like 12 questions, enough already, we stop. Where's my union rep, right? So what we do is we try to keep that window of 3 or 4. So as we're adding a question, we erase a question. And we just keep working like that. And we just have that on a whiteboard somewhere where all the kids can see it. We can also use a horizontal version of the knowledge feed. So let's say I'm doing word problems or geometry problems. What we do is we actually print out the problems on small bits of paper, and then we add, here's a stack of the first question. And the students go to the boards, they set up their boards, and then someone comes and gets the first question. When they're done the first question, they come to get the second, and the second is now out. When they come to get the third is out. When they come to get the fourth is out. I've removed the first. And so there is always that sliding window of 3 or 4. They never really know how far they've gone. They're working in that circle on the board. They don't know how much they've done. It just keeps everything moving really well. All right. So that's the body of the lesson. Now we get into the closing. And so the closing is the most important part of the lesson. You see, people think that building thinking classrooms is about the whiteboards. It's not. Like it is. Like it's necessary. We get the kids working at the whiteboards. What is super important to understand, though, is that when they're working at the whiteboards, it's not all gold, right? It's not all gold. They have incorrect thoughts, incomplete thoughts. Their thoughts, they're having thoughts, but they're kind of unorganized, unstructured, informal. They're kind of floating out here. They're untethered, right? They're just kind of floating out here. Now what happens, and they're important that they're having these ideas, but what happens if the bell rings and they walk out of the room with their ideas floating out here? What happens to those ideas? They just float away. And then they come back the next day and they're like, nope, never seen this before. I don't know what you're talking about. Right? If you've ever had this experience, that's what's happened. These ideas that they had have just floated away. The purpose of the closing is to help them organize, structure, and formalize their thinking. And in doing so, closing
back.
is, yeah, the closing is the most important part of a lesson. We have to close the lesson. It's so important that we dedicate a third of the lesson to it. A third. Right? And I know that feels like a lot of time. But if we don't take the time to close the lesson, everything that came before it is a waste of time. We gotta close the lesson. And there are 3 ways we can close a lesson: consolidation, notes, and check your understanding questions. We don't have to do all 3, but we have to close the lesson. I did all 3 here today. I rarely do all 3. In the lesson today with 7th graders, I did 2. I did consolidation and notes. Okay? It's rare that we would do all 3 because we don't have enough time. But you got to do at least 1. You got to spend a third of the lesson. You got to close the lesson. And we did it in 3 different ways here today. We did, first we did the consolidation. Right? The consolidation was me gathering you together, and I put up 3 questions. You have to put them in order, and we would do that as a turn and talk, and then we would talk through each one, right? And the 3 I'm picking is highlighting the different nuances that you gained out of this lesson, right? We talked about place value. We talked about multiples of 10. We talked about the idea that there's more than one way to do it, right? It's not me giving a lecture. It's me pulling your ideas. I'm helping you organize, structure, and formalize your thinking, right? I'm helping you pull it all together. Then we did notes. And I sent you back to your whiteboards to do that. And that's what we do with the kids. We send them back to the whiteboard. And the notes have got this same structure every time. It's got 3 examples: example 1, example 2, example 3. Example 1 is a mild question. It's fill in the blank. Example 2 is a medium question, but they got to bring their own structure. Example 3, they got to create their own question. And then quadrant 4 is things to remember. What are things you know now that you want to make sure you remember 3 weeks from now? If we're working with K to 2 students, we only do example 1 and example 2. All right. So the notes are super important that they're happening at the whiteboards. And there's really good reason for this, right? The kids don't care about the notes for the purpose of just having a record, but they are willing to do the notes at the whiteboard. And it's part of that, what I said, that closing the lesson. It's helping them organize, structure, and formalize their thinking. It's so important. All right, and I know you had questions like, okay, so what do we do with these notes when we're done if they're at the whiteboards? Well, if you have, the quickest thing to do is take a picture. You can take a picture, they can take a picture. If a picture is taken, they have to do something with it. They have to suck it into a Google Doc, and they have to put a label on it. They have to put a date on it. They have to do something with it. They can't just leave it in some folder somewhere, right? Or you can have them sit down and write it out in their notebooks after they've done it at the boards, not instead of, after. Because if you send them to the notebooks right away, 20 to 40% of the kids will just opt out. They will do it at the whiteboards. They will not do it in their notebooks. And if you've ever worked with a 7th grader trying to get them to do notes, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? They don't care. But they care enough to do it at the whiteboards. And remember, the purpose of the closing is to help them organize, structure, and formalize their thinking. And that's what we're doing here. And then after that, we did the check your understanding questions. And the check your understanding questions are also super important, right? Like this is now their chance to do some individual work, right? So they get to do it individually. They get to work through some of these questions. The 3 rules are always the same. And we always start with, depending on the question, we tend to start with 3 mild, 3 medium, and 3 spicy. And then we add questions as they're working, because if a student starts at mild, they can go to medium. If they start at medium, they can go to spicy. But if they start at spicy, I need to add more questions as they're working to keep them busy, right? And we're going to work to the end of the class. There are some things about it that are super important. 1, there's only 3 headings. There's no extra spicy. There's no habanero or Hades Inferno, right? It's just 3. I can add more spicy questions to get spicier. A second thing that's super important is the headings themselves. Mild, medium, spicy is non-judgmental. A third thing that's super important is I'm not collecting it. It's not an exit ticket. They're doing it for themselves, by themselves. This time I had you do the check by you checking on a calculator. This task is totally appropriate for that. But I can also have them do a check by turning and talking to their table partner after they've done a bunch and checking their answers. Or I can just write the answers up on the board next to the questions after a while that they've been working. But they need to have a way to check. And then we also say to them, if you need help, get help. If someone else needs help, give help. Super important, a lot of nuance to this. All right. I see a question about a 90-minute block. Yeah, 90-minute block. I would do 30 minutes of closing. I'm doing the launch. I'm doing the consolidation. We're doing notes and we're doing check your understanding questions. If I have 30 minutes, I have time to do it. All right. So what did we learn today? So last day, hold on here. Where are you? There you are. Last day we focused on these chapters, and you can see how we launch a lesson. Chapter 6 was really used today, right? And that sequence of tasks we did in the middle, in the body, they are all based on hints and extensions. It's all based on flow. Okay. Today, however, we were much more focused on the closing of the lesson, right?
Peter, can you hear me? You're frozen again.
And I'm back, I believe. I'm back?
You're back, Peter. Yes.
Yeah.
Apologies for that.
Yeah. So today we were focused on the third toolkit, chapter 7, 10, and 11. And again, if you want more information, there's the orange book. However, unlike the other days, there's been a lot of updates on these practices, a lot. And if you really want to understand what we were covering today, it's chapter 5, 6, 7 in the green book, which is the task book for K-5, or it's chapter 5, 6, 7 on the brand new 6 to 12 book. So if you have access to these books, that's the research. Those chapters are much more updated than what's in the orange book. Nothing we've talked about today contradicts what's in the orange book. It's still 7, 10, and 11. Still we'll talk about those things. It's just that those refinements around all the details are really in these later two books. And if you want to start enacting some of these lessons, each one of these books, the green and the burgundy, have 50 lesson plans for you, fully structured. In each one, it has, for example, it has the launch script. It has all of the tasks that you need for the body of the lesson. It has the 3 questions for the consolidation. It has the note template. It has all the check your understanding questions. Like, it has everything you need. All right. Next time we're together, we were supposed to focus entirely on chapter 12. But we've been kind of focusing on that a little bit all the time. That's that arrow. We're still going to talk about it next day. But the basis of all of these lessons is chapter 9. Chapter 9 is how we create that sequence of tasks. So we're going to make a slight modification in the Rocket PD sort of course plan, and we're going to talk more about how to create that flow sequence, create, like today, that sequence of tasks. How do we get that sequence right? And then how do we use that sequence to actually generate what we need for the consolidation notes and check your understanding questions? All right. So I'll see you next week. I will stick around and answer some questions, but do keep in mind it's 2:30 in the morning here. And I do want to get back to bed. All right. So Gerardo will send out that sequence to you, and we'll also give you a copy of all